Hi guys, this is Mr. Xiao, and I am going to be explaining assignment number two on week seven assignments. So in our discussion research worksheet, which is assignment number two, we are going to be working on research. We're going to be looking up things, using news, using connections, and building up a method of responding to some topics that we're going to be talking about. So this is actually going to be tricky because this will be due for those that have odd number classes on Thursday of week seven, whereas for those that are even numbers, that's periods 2, 4, 6, that's going to be on a Tuesday for you guys to be ready for that because there's no school Friday of this week seven. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the worksheet. It looks kind of like this. Okay, so the research worksheet looks like this. And for those that are in Mr. Shah's class, and this is probably what's going to look like for Ms. Ortega's class as well, it's going to be this assignment. So you click on assignment number two, and there's the directions. So everything here is also going to be in a worksheet. So let's go and click on the worksheet. And mind you, there's actually several things listed here. There is parlay, which is actually for our actual discussion. And what this is, I want to show you this first. This is actually going to be a sentence discussion frame. So we kind of wrote out a bunch of different ways that you could start a conversation, ask questions in the discussion, challenge an idea or not agree with an idea, build on an idea, which is agree with an idea, or support your thinking, summarize, and the summarize will be probably the last part. So this is kind of like a flow of discussion. How do we start? So as we kind of clarify and ask questions, agree and disagree, and then finally, how do we actually kind of end that conversation? All of these are just ways that you could actually use to make yourself be clear about what you're trying to say and how you're going to weigh in on certain topics. So we're going to be doing this, we're going to be practicing this worksheet in several different exercises. And so we're going to be using an app called Parlay for you to kind of put in points and see if you kind of give enough discussion on certain topics. And then you'll start with things that you like versus and into the alignment here and also topics that are important to this modern day. All right, so let me actually show you the worksheet that you need to finish before our discussion, which will be either on Thursday or Tuesday of the week eight. So the research worksheet is going to be a Socratic. So think about this as like as we prepare for a Socratic seminar. And what a Socratic is where everybody has a discussion and everybody is supposed to talk about what is going to debate on what is certain topics or issues and how they're related to what we've been talking about. And what we've been talking about is the Enlightenment thinkers, and we're going to boil it down to about three different ideas that the Enlightenment thinkers still kind of use today, and we're still discussing. So we're going to be using Socratic to discuss the ideas of natural rights, a social contract, and how the balance of power shifts. Okay, and how does all this lead to revolution, which is going to be our coming up topics as we kind of discuss American French revolutions. So in our discussion, you're going to need to have enough evidence and research. So sourcing and context of current events is really important. So you might not understand certain context if you take a quote out of context and it doesn't really relate to maybe some of these ideas that we've been talking about. So make sure that you look at the context of what is happening in an event or in a news article, that you're not misquoting or not misusing it. Okay. All right, so the three things you need to kind of accomplish on this worksheet is define, first of all, what natural rights, social contract, and balance of power is. And so that should have been something that you did in part one or assignment number one this week. And we're going to be looking at that in a lot of different ways. And we also talked about it um, prior in week six as we kind of discussed our alignment thinkers. So it's not important that you know where they came from, but just know what Locke was talking about when he talked about natural rights, what Rousseau social contract meant, and how Montesquieu talked about balance of power. and just make sure that it relates to some of the topics we're going to be talking about. Okay. All right. So after you define and identify the ideas of natural rights, social contract, and balance of power, we're going to be talking about very specific topics, okay? And we're going to be introducing these topics through some slides, but the topics talk about patriotism, okay, how we take a knee, and how that is a reflection of First Amendment or patriotism, or and the thing that we can look at are several pictures that we have listed, okay? So when we talk about taking a knee, it's going to be something like this, okay? Taking a knee. Colin Kaepernick, football player, he was very upset with our social inequality and just some things that were happening in our country. So during the national anthem, he took a knee, and he was very unpopular. People did not like him for that. And now we talk about George Floyd and how that knee, taking a knee, is that actually going to be some sort of civil liberty violation, or is it exercising First Amendment, or is it a form of persecution, or a form of, I guess, injustice? So when we look at taking this knee, what does it represent nowadays? Because before it was unpatriotic. Now it's about something else. So we can really look into what that means, okay, and all the different people that have been thinking about what that thinking means, okay. All right, so we also have a topic of government and environment, and so that's actually another topic that we're going to talk about. So California wildfires, the kind of the excessive use of oil and gas dependency. We also talk about national parks. Do we even need them? And what about our ocean? Okay, there's actually articles about the great coral reefs in Australia. They're dying. And so what does that mean for our change in our environment? How much responsibility does the government have on this? So we're also going to be talking about COVID-19, the different aspects of that, and also immigration. Okay, should we be closing our borders to immigrants? Should we only have certain immigrants come from certain countries? Okay, who decides? Do legal immigrants have a constitutional right? So there's a lot to discuss in each of these topics. And so in your worksheet, you're going to find a source, a reliable website. Okay, so that means ABC, NBC, it means like CNN, it means The Guardian, the New York Times, the LA Times. It means every news article that has been around for more than just a few days and isn't actually written by just one person. So you need to make sure you look at reliable websites, because if it's not reliable or if it doesn't even look accurate, okay, we're probably going to kick it out. Okay, and then we're going to challenge you on that. You're going to give 3 facts from your source, okay, whether it's about some of the questions we're asking here, or it could be about certain things that you feel that you want to share. Wow, this article said that, and so on and so forth. Okay, so give 3 facts from your source and from your article that you take. You're also going to need to think about how is this an example of natural rights? Is this an example of social contract? Or is this actually a balancing of power of how Montesquieu checks and balances? There's actually a lot of things going on in government at this time. And we kind of challenge this idea, is power balanced, just even in the US government? Think about frames of discussion and what you're going to use for your sentence frame. So go back to our parlay discussion frames and think about how you will use this based on what you found. For example, you might hear somebody say something during discussion and you're like, I'm a little confused. For example, I'm a little confused on how you mentioned in any NBC News on how Colin Kaepernick uses social contract to discuss kneeling during the Super Bowl, because it doesn't seem that it was a social contract issue. All right, maybe he was just upset about the state of our inequality. okay, which is not social contract exactly, right? So maybe you want to clarify a point with somebody and think about how you would use that discussion frame. So I included several discussion frames and how you can use it for each topic. Okay, so here's one for COVID-19. You made a good point when you said Florida's COVID-19 response is an example of actual First Amendment rights. I will also add how, like LA, okay, LA actually versus Orange County response to COVID-19 is also a First Amendment right issue. It also supports First Amendment rights because we discuss how certain local governments have an exercise of what they want versus versus having to follow what everybody or the silent majority wants. So again, you're gonna think about how you're gonna use the discussion frames and look at the discussion frames and look at your articles that you bring and make sure you write it out so you could practice it, and then it'll be easier to alter it when you're in discussion. At least practice the discussion frames so that you are not unprepared during our parlay app conversation and our Socratic seminar. So if you have any questions on this, please feel free to ask myself or Ms. Orteg and how do we proceed in doing our discussion, and be ready that day that we have our discussion. Okay, there are many good topics to look at, and if you feel like there is a topic that kind of sort of relates, you could always ask us to see which category that falls in. Also, very important, you need to find a source for all the topics, one for each. So even if you don't discuss immigration or you don't discuss government and environment, you will actually have something just in case. Okay, you feel like, you know what, I should weigh in on this subject. Okay, so during discussion, because it's very organic, make sure that you use everything you can and make sure you're a part of the class as we do our discussion. Okay, thank you guys, and we'll see you in the parliament.